Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. We will be comparing the Soviet and American Army in the year of 1989. Uniforms, equipment, weapons, life at home in each country, and more will be discussed in this video. Without any more delay, let's get started. The most important comparison here is the uniforms, equipment, and weapons used by each side. First, we will start with the average Soviet mechanized infantryman known as the motostrelki. For his helmet, he wears the SSH-68 helmet. This helmet protects him from shrapnel and other debris he might encounter on the battlefield. Some motostrelki may attach improvised helmet covers on. These could be made out of burlap, or it may be from the hood of a KZS or KLMK suit, if he could get his hands on one. There were no standard helmet covers available to Soviet troops. The uniform he wears is the model of 1988 uniform, also known as the Afghanka. First seen in Afghanistan, used by VDV troops in 1983, the Afghanka would become the standard Soviet Army uniform in 1988. It features a pocket on each arm, 4 pockets on the chest, and 4 on the pants. It was produced in a khaki color, and contrary to some belief, the uniform is not a copy of the American M81 BDU. While airborne cuts and camouflage variants were produced, the average infantryman would not be issued said variants. For his load-bearing equipment, it would be hard to determine what would be used against NATO/American forces in a hypothetical war. A veteran of the Soviet-Afghan War may wear a Chicom or Lifchik chest rig, while a new recruit may wear the standard load-bearing system. The standard Soviet load-bearing system would consist of a faux leather belt with either a shiny brass buckle or a subdued olive drab one. The subdued buckles never saw use in Afghanistan, as they were specifically built for a European war. They would most likely see their debut in this scenario. When wearing the belt, on the right side next to the buckle would be a 4-cell AK magazine pouch. This pouch could hold 4 magazines and an oiler. On the left side of the buckle, he would wear a grenade pouch. Also on his belt would be a 6kh4 bayonet with sheath and a standard canteen. In a combat scenario, he would most likely not be wearing a shovel or shovel carrier. This Soviet infantryman would be wearing the Marjalovsky combat boot. For his rifle, he would use an AK-74 assault rifle. The AK-74 could fire in either semi-automatic or fully automatic, and use a 30-round Bakelite magazine chambered in 5.45 by 39 ammunition. If engaged in close-quarters combat, he could attach the bayonet to the front end of the rifle. Specialty roles would have slightly different load-carrying systems than the regular infantrymen and would carry different weapons. For more information on these equipment/weapons used in these roles, I would recommend checking out the second and third videos in my Soviet-Afghan War series. As mentioned before, it would likely be possible with some difficulty for a Soviet soldier to acquire either a KZS or KLMK suit. The KZS is a 2-piece suit printed in gold leaf berezka. It was dipped in unknown chemicals to protect the user from some effects of a nuclear blast. It did, however, have good masking capabilities and would be handy for a Soviet soldier to have. The KLMK suit was produced in a similar but white leaf berezka. It was a piece suit made of a fabric as opposed to the mesh-like material used with the KZS suit. Again, this would be difficult for the common soldier to acquire, as the suits were mainly used by scouts and snipers. On the other side of the Iron Curtain, we have the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army had a very different set of uniforms, equipment, and weapons from the Soviet Army. Starting at the top, the average U.S. Army infantryman wore a PASGT helmet, which is an acronym for Personal Armor System, for a ground troops helmet, with an M81 woodland cover and a helmet band to keep the cover down. The helmet could stop shrapnel/fragmentation just like the Soviet helmet, but the American helmet was thicker and has a more sophisticated liner system that, in my opinion, having worn both the SSH-68 and PASGT, is more comfortable than its Soviet counterpart. Some soldiers put goggles on their helmets, or some used what is called Manchu hair. Manchu hair is basically a camouflage net put over the helmet cover with strips of woodland fabric or BDUs attached to the helmet. This was primarily used by the 7th Infantry Division in Panama, but it is safe to assume some soldiers would do it in a hypothetical Cold War gone hot conflict. His uniform is the M81 BDU, or battle dress uniform. This uniform has 4 pockets on the chest and 4 on the pants. The BDU worn at the time was printed in the M81 woodland pattern, hence the term M81 BDU. Something that would be worn on a case-by-case basis would be the Pasget vest. The vest was a part of the same personal armor system for ground troops system as the helmet. The vest weighed 11 pounds at most and could protect from shrapnel/fragmentation. Some small-caliber pistol rounds have been stopped by the vest in testing, but the vest was not designed to stop said rounds, nor was it rated to. Over his BDU or Pasget vest, he would wear a set of ALICE equipment. ALICE is the acronym for All-Purpose, Lightweight Individual Carrying Equipment. ALICE was evolved from the Vietnam-era M1956 webbing and was made of a nylon material. The standard ALICE load would consist of a LC2 belt with a gray buckle, ALICE suspenders, 2 ALICE small arms ammunition pouches on each side of the buckle, which would hold 3 30-round M16 magazines, each and 2 grenades per pouch. He would have 1 or 2 standard ALICE canteens with their covers. On the suspenders, a soldier might put a flashlight or compass/first aid pouch on the opposite of the shoulder his rifle leans on when shooting. To hold small items, some soldiers may have used Vietnam-era M1961 butt packs. These small packs could come in handy to hold some socks or even MREs. On either side of the belt, he would have his M9 bayonet and sheath. For boots, a soldier had a few choices. They could either wear black leather combat boots, which were the standard issue, or third pattern jungle boots. The jungle boots had a nylon part on each side in either olive green or black. The American soldier carried the M16A2 as his rifle. The M16A2 could fire in semi-automatic and in 3-round burst modes. It used 30-round detachable magazines and was chambered in 5.56 by 45 millimeters. The M16's carrying handle could accommodate certain rifle sights, though it would be fair to say not all soldiers would have an optic. The front end of the barrel could mount the soldier's M9 bayonet. Like the Soviet Army, the U.S. Army had different roles and different equipment for these roles. If you would like to know more about said equipment, please check out the second and third parts of my U.S. Army and Panama series, links in the description. With the basic rifleman setups already laid out, let's compare the two armies solely on uniforms, equipment, and weapons. In the category of helmets, the Pasget helmet is superior to the SSH-68 in just about every way. The Pasget has the benefits of a standard helmet cover, a comfortable liner, good protection, and a wide variety of sizes. Compare this to the SSH-68, which has no standardized helmet cover, preventing the Soviet soldier from blending in easily to his environment with the equipment provided to him. The SSH-68 was designed to be worn over a hat, such as the M88 Afghan cap. If for whatever reason a soldier did not have a hat available, he would be forced to wear a pretty uncomfortable and big helmet. The helmet, even in its smallest size, is big due to being designed to be worn over a cap. For uniforms, the BDU has one big advantage over the Afghanka. This is the M81 woodland pattern that the BDU was printed in. Most Soviet Afghankas were only made in the regular khaki color. If camouflage garments were more commonly produced and standard issue, the Afghanka would win, as its only advantage would be the extra pocket on each arm, which would come in handy for soldiers. Since mass production of camouflage garments never happened, the BDU wins. For load-carrying equipment, both sides are pretty equal, with the favor leaning towards the ALICE. The ALICE system was compatible with the M1910 hanger system, which allowed a variety of webbing to be attached onto the belt. In an actual combat setting with the standard setup, this advantage is not huge. Something to note would be that Soviet soldiers had a standard load of 4 magazines in their single ammo pouch, while the Americans had only 3 magazines per pouch, but 2 pouches would be worn. In this category, it is a tie, with it leaning in ALICE's favor. Soviet body armor was not standard issue like the American Pasget vest, so there is no comparison to be made. For rifles, the M16A2 and the AK-74 are very different. The main differences are in their firing modes. The M16 can fire in semi-automatic and in a 3-round burst, while the AK-74 could fire in semi-automatic and fully automatic. The burst feature on the M16 is best for hitting one target at a time in short to medium distances. The AK-74's fully automatic could be useful for laying down suppressing fire on American troops, but recoil control and ammo waste would be an issue. These were the same reasons why fully automatic capabilities were on the M16A1, but not on the M16A2. The M16 and the AK-74 fire similar rounds. The AK-74's 5.45 round replaced the old AK-47's 7.62 round after the Soviets studied the American 5.56 cartridge in Vietnam. The M16 also allows some optics to be mounted on the carry handle. The AK-74 does not have optic mounting capabilities on the standard model. Overall, the rifles are in a tie. One is better than the other in a certain area and vice versa. The situations at home in 1989 were very different for Soviet and American citizens. Soviet people had not much to look forward to. Their nation had just withdrawn from Afghanistan with almost 15,000 Soviet soldiers dead at a minimum. Their war in Afghanistan had weakened the economy severely, and they had nothing to show for it. They had failed to meet their goals in the region, and the Afghan government was barely holding on. At home, Soviet citizens had to pay high prices for little food, and they saw their country deteriorating around them. State-run companies had little interest in producing necessary goods for the economy. Many people in the Soviet Union lived in poor areas and became poor themselves due to the Soviet Empire collapsing under its own weight. The 1986 Chernobyl disaster had severely weakened the Soviet economy. The cleanup bill for the disaster came in at the equivalent of $18 billion at the time. This virtually bankrupted the Soviet Union. Calls for social change began to echo louder and louder throughout the streets. Previously banned Western culture made its way into the Soviet Union and changed the minds of many young Soviets. Unrest throughout the streets and crime significantly increased in the late 80s. To say the situation in the Soviet Union was a nightmare would be an understatement. The United States, when compared to the Soviet Union in 1989, was seemingly a candyland. In 1989, American people could easily afford the things they needed to live. Most people had jobs and a stable income. Crime rates were significantly lower than those in the Soviet Union. The overall quality of life was good. Video games were very popular around this time and provided great forms of entertainment. Arcade games like Pac-Man were popular, and video games like Donkey Kong and Mario were enjoyed by many in the US. Ironically, the Soviet-designed game Tetris also gained much popularity in the US. Overall, life in America in 1989 was pretty good. The quality of life at home and the economy directly and indirectly would affect the Soviet and American militaries. The Soviets would most likely look at another war after being essentially defeated in Afghanistan as the final nail in the coffin to the Soviet Union. With the economy issues, getting soldiers the equipment they needed could have been a challenge. New uniforms, equipment, and weapons could be in short supply among frontline soldiers. Antiquated equipment from 1950s and 1960s stockpiles would most likely be used. The low morale of Soviet soldiers was the opposite in American soldiers. American soldiers had not been in a major war since Vietnam, which ended almost 15 years prior. U.S. Army supply lines could easily supply soldiers with the equipment they needed. Spare parts for weapons and heavy machinery could be acquired. In a Cold War gone hot but non-nuclear scenario in 1989, the U.S. military and NATO would most likely win. The solid economy and stable country would give U.S. soldiers a massive edge on their Soviet counterparts. Soviet soldiers had not much to fight for, while American soldiers would most likely see this war as a way to bring about peace to the world via putting the Soviet Union to rest and a way return to normal civilian lives. That's all I have for today's video. Next week, we will be continuing the comparison between the U.S. and Soviet militaries, with the next episode focusing on each country's air forces. Please like and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel out. Take care everyone, and stay tuned for the next episode.